Welcome back. These are some ideas, some thoughts from my book called Theories of Truth and Introduction. Came out in 2013 from Bloomsbury Press. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through some ideas about how a study of truth connects to the other disciplines, rather subdisciplines, of philosophy. Philosophy, again, is love of wisdom or friendship with wisdom. And just like in any friendship with a human being, in your friendship with wisdom, you're going to have common activities. And philosophers throughout history, Western philosophers anyway, Christian philosophers, ancient pagan philosophers in the Western tradition, have identified three areas of philosophy, three main or broad areas of inquiry in the discipline of philosophy. These are three ologies, right? You know what an ology is? Biology, study of living things; psychology, study of the mind; anthropology, study of human beings, the anthropos, cultures, things like that. So too in philosophy, there are three ologies. The first is called ontology. And I want to walk you through ontology, epistemology, axiology, and show you how truth, the study of truth, fits into each of those areas of philosophy. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of what this video is going to do. So ontology is the study of being. On in Greek means being or existence. So ontology is the study of existence or the nature of being as such. So if you're an ontologist, you're going to ask questions like, what is real? What really exists? What is the nature of existence? And philosophers have all kinds of different answers to this. Some are physicalists, some are dualists, some are monists, non-physicalist varieties. So there's quite a different answers to this. But ontology sometimes is called first philosophy. And first philosophy, the study of the nature of what's real, deals with questions about reality as such and the existential status of human beings. And this has a deep connection to how we live our lives as well. So the question now is, okay, well, how does a study of truth connect to metaphysics or ontology? Sometimes ontology, the term ontology is called metaphysics. That's just the study of the nature of reality. It's not. Unfortunately, metaphysics has got the term metaphysics has gotten a bad rap over the last 70, 80 years. You go into a used bookstore, if you're into that sort of thing, and look at the section that says metaphysics. You're like, oh, sweet. There's some stuff on the nature of reality, the nature of the soul, the afterlife, God. You look around in that section, you find all kinds of stuff on UFOs and pyramid power and healing crystals and all kinds of esoteric, weird stuff. So this is not metaphysics in that sense. Okay, so truth connects to metaphysics and ontology in at least two ways. First thing, there's a metaphysics of truth. So if truth is real, then it's studying it will be studying something that is real. It has being, it has existence. So take, for example, the example that I give in the book here. I'll give you an example. The experience that we have of finding the world as you believe it to be. So if I have a belief in my mind or a thought that there is a yellow cup on this table I'm sitting at, and then I look at the world and I see a yellow cup, I look at it and I see it. So now my mind, what's in my mind, it's not exactly located in my head here, but in my mind, and then what's in reality, those two things are matching, right? And when that matching occurs, then I've got the truth. But the matching can occur even before I see the yellow cup on the table. That matching occurs independently of my experience of it. But if you just take that example, that example, the belief that I have, say that there's a yellow cup on the table, that belief is fundamentally no different than a belief that all of reality is spiritual. It's no different in the sense that both beliefs are about the world, and both beliefs will either match or don't match the reality it's about, right? Or take the belief that everything that exists is physical. Right? Now that's a belief. That belief is about how things are, and that belief either matches how things are or it doesn't. Okay, so in that sense, truth is the same for that belief, that very deep metaphysical belief, and the belief that there's a yellow cup on the table. They're both beliefs, and they're both about the world. So there is the truth that applies. Truth applies to metaphysics in that there's metaphysics of truth. There's the nature of the reality of truth. Now, of course, finding that there's a yellow cup on this table is going to be much easier than finding a grand theory about the ultimate nature of reality, right? One is very easy to do, and the other quite difficult. So finding the truth about metaphysics is fundamentally the same, though, in each case. It's a matter of looking at the reality in question and seeing if my beliefs match reality. So I can form a simple belief. There's a yellow cup on this table. I can look at reality and say, oh yeah, my belief matches reality. So too, I could think of all of reality and think it's all physical. Now I could do that, and I could use that belief and go look at reality and figure out if that belief matches reality. Now I would argue, this isn't the place, the video to do this. I'd argue if you have a belief that everything that's physical, everything that's real is physical, you're going to run into some things very quickly that aren't physical, like your own thoughts, your own beliefs, the nature of the soul, mathematical entities, Platonic forms, God, right? All of these things are non-physical, yet there's good reason to think that they are real. Okay, so first of all, there's the metaphysics of truth, and then secondly, there is the truth about metaphysics as well as a metaphysics of truth. Okay, so there's truth about metaphysics and a metaphysics of truth. Okay, so in other words, any metaphysical claim will be true or false, depending on whether it matches reality, on the defense of the correspondence view that I'm going to give, that I give in my book. But I'm going to do some videos on that as well. But also there's an ontology or metaphysics of truth. So if I take a case of truth where my mind matches the reality that I believed about. So if I believe there's a yellow cup on the table, I experience the yellow cup, and then my belief matches that reality, that whole thing is a real event. The event of finding the world as it is itself an event. And that event has an ontology. It's got qualities of it that are real, that we can think about and give an analysis of. And that's going to be the metaphysics of truth. So the truth of metaphysics and the metaphysics of truth. And hopefully that distinction is helpful for you. Okay. All right. So I think that's it for this video. Let's keep this one short, and I hope you enjoyed thinking about the truth of metaphysics and the metaphysics of truth. These are both areas in which truth is central to one of the major disciplines of philosophy, which is metaphysics or ontology. The other two or three areas are epistemology and axiology, which is usually divided up between ethics and aesthetics. The next area of philosophy that we want to look at with respect to truth, a study of truth, is the area of epistemology. Right? So philosophy has love of wisdom, friendship with wisdom, will have several activities that you have in common with wisdom thought of as a person in your friendship with wisdom. And the first activity that we looked at in a separate video is ontology, which is the study of the nature of reality. Sometimes it's just called metaphysics. And the second activity is another ology, and this ology is called epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. Episteme, knowledge, and ology is, the study of something. So if you're an epistemologist, you're going to ask questions like, what is knowledge? How do we know? What's the difference between having an opinion and knowing something and really knowing it? What's the extent and scope and limit of human knowledge? And, it's kind of funny because people often talk about, we live in a knowledge economy, right? But oftentimes, no one's able to say what knowledge economy amounts to. It usually has something to do with computers or something like that. AI maybe. But knowledge isn't found by asking a chat GPT or something an answer to a question. Knowledge isn't located in Wikipedia, as good and useful as both those things might be. So epistemology is a philosophical activity that's proper to the study of truth. So alethology, the study of truth, is really a subdiscipline of epistemology. And while truth has its own metaphysics, and as I'll mention probably in a separate video, its own value. In fact, all of these areas of philosophy, ontology, epistemology, and axiology, ethics, and aesthetics, all of those areas are intimately united and I think ultimately inseparable. So why is truth generally thought of as a part of epistemology? Well, one reason is that truth is connected with what we believe. As I've said, previously, beliefs are the kinds of things that are true or false. Right? Beliefs can match reality or fail to match it. Beliefs play a large role in our claims to know things. In fact, as you may know, one of the classic definitions of knowledge that's come down to us from, at least from Plato, maybe before, is that knowledge is thought of as a belief that is justified and true, a justified true belief account of knowledge, or as Dallas Willard puts it in much of his writings, that knowledge is an act or disposition of representing things as they are on an appropriate basis of thought and experience. Okay, so now notice that Willard's description of knowledge there doesn't involve belief, it involves a representational state. But representational states can become beliefs. I don't think you can have a belief without a representational state. So whether or not knowledge requires belief or a representational state is sufficient as that component of the account of the traditional account of knowledge is justified true belief, we could have an intramural debate about that, maybe a separate video. So in an analysis of a theory of knowledge, someone might want to know what exactly justification or evidence someone has for their beliefs, but also whether or not the belief is true. Okay, so do our beliefs match reality? So an account of truth is part and parcel of an account of knowledge. I don't think there's been any accounts of knowledge that I know of that don't require truth as a component, unless you just want to give up on knowledge altogether as a real thing. So there's also an epistemology of truth. Okay, so there's truth in epistemology as an account of knowledge, but there's also an epistemology of truth itself. And it's a perfectly reasonable question to ask, how do I know what truth is? Right? How do I know what truth is? I want to know what truth is. How do I know that? What are the conditions under which I can have knowledge of truth itself? So this is an epistemological question that pertains to truth itself as an object of inquiry. So let me give you an example of this. Consider the question that I just mentioned. How do I know what truth is? Suppose you try and answer that by just appealing to your own experience of truth, of finding the world as you believe it to be. So let me say that again. Suppose I start with the question, how do I know what truth is? And then just ask yourself, well, if I've experienced truth, can't I give an account of truth from relying on those experiences of it? In other words, how do we give an account of anything? From our experience of it, right? If I have experience of something, I can give an account of it. So truth is the kind of thing that not only has being, it pertains to ontology. If you're going to give an account of truth, you have to talk about the ontic components of truth, how they exist, but you also have to give an account of how truth is known. So my own view of this is we know what truth is from direct awareness of our experiences of truth. So for example, if I form a belief that there is a yellow cup on this table, if I form that belief, then I can use my belief to examine the world, and I can look on the table and see, oh, there's a yellow cup on the table. And I can pick it up and look at it and say, okay, my belief matches reality. And I can be aware of the matching between my belief and reality. And when I'm aware of that matching relationship, I'm aware of what truth is. So if I want to know how I know what truth is, I can just appeal to my experience. Now, again, skepticism might have to be rebutted at this point. Someone might raise some skeptical arguments. How do I know if I'm a matrix? Okay, all of those kinds of things. I'm not going to worry about that too much. I think skepticism is a possible psychological condition. But unless the skeptic has good reasons to get me to think that I'm in a skeptical situation where I have to doubt what I'm experiencing, I don't think there's any good reason to believe it. Offer the skeptic a rebuttal, not necessarily a refutation. Okay. So that's epistemology. I think there's a clear epistemology of truth, and part of a defense of a correspondence view of truth, which I'll be defending in other videos in this series, I think is going to be extremely beneficial, of being able to specify through our experiences of truth what exactly truth is and how we know it. Axiology is the study of value. Axiologists try to answer questions like, what kinds of things are valuable? Are things valuable because we value them, or do things have value because they are valuable? These are major questions. Right? Discipline of axiology usually is divided into two types of value: moral value and non-moral value. Moral value is the study of ethics, and non-moral value is the study of aesthetics. Now, some philosophers might give you different terms there, but that's my take on that division. So, if you're studying aesthetics, you're going to study beauty. And aestheticians ask questions like, what is beauty? Or what makes a work of art beautiful? Is beauty just in the eye of the beholder? Beauty just how we feel. So like ontology and epistemology, there will be truth in any aesthetic theory. So if I give an account that something is beautiful just because the culture agrees that it is, I'm going to have to give you a claim about that, maybe an argument to that conclusion. And of course, that argument is going to have premises and a conclusion. And the epistemologist who's studying truth will want to ask, are those things true? So in other words, there's going to be truth to any account of aesthetics. One's account of the nature of beauty will either match or not match with reality. It'll either be true or false. Is there an aesthetics of truth, though? That's kind of an interesting question. I'm not sure I've thought about this very much. I think I need to do some more thinking on this. But take for an example, the example of finding my keys on my desk, right? So I forget my keys, they're on my desk at work. I forget them. I get to my car and I remember, where are my keys? And I form the belief my keys are on my desk. So I go back to my office and I look, right? So, and I see the truth of my belief when I see my keys on my desk. Now, suppose that that's an instance of truth. It has being and it could be known, but is it beautiful? Well, maybe. If beauty involves order and specified realization of the way things are, then yes, truth has a certain beauty to it. In other words, truth itself, as the experience of matching of my belief with reality, has a certain order, it has a symmetry, it's got proper placement of mind and reality, and it brings a certain pleasure with it. And all of those things are part and parcel of the traditional understanding of beauty: symmetry, order, and aesthetic pleasure. Okay, so I think yes. Now, my book, the book that I wrote, Introduction to Theories of Truth, doesn't deal too much with the aesthetics of truth, but I think there might be a really nice project to pursue along these lines. So yeah, I think there's the truth of aesthetics, and there's an aesthetics of truth. All right. In addition to aesthetics, ethics is another major part of axiology. And ethics, sometimes you might be thinking of as the telos of philosophy, the point of it. In other words, the purpose of being a philosopher, thinking philosophically, is to become a certain kind of person and live a certain kind of life. An end. There's a purpose to it. Ethics will seek answers to questions like, what is the good life? Who's a good person? What kind of life is worth living? Does the good life give meaning? Does the good life mean giving all your money to the poor, taking a vow of poverty? Or does the good life mean acquiring as much wealth as possible? Who's a good person? Who should I want to be like? These are all questions of ethics. These are all ethical questions. What is the good? How do we know what's good? How do I become good? Who is good? All of these kinds of questions. Ethicists seek answers to these questions, and your view of ethics is going to determine how you kind of person you are. So there's clearly a truth to ethics, right? Just like there's a truth to metaphysics or aesthetics or an account of knowledge. Ethical views either match or fail to match reality, just like ordinary common sense beliefs. Someone once said that truth is what you run into when you're wrong. That's especially obvious when I try to live my life a certain way. Hopefully you haven't had that happen to you too often. Right? There's also an ethics to truth. Truth is good, and it's morally good. Truth helps us live our lives well. In a sense, truth is valuable. To make this clear, you might consider two lives. Right? Consider two lives. One life maintains a commitment to truth. The other life doesn't. I mean, is it even possible to call a life good or worth living if there's a total absence of concern for truth? On a purely practical level, it seems like the answer is no. How would I even make it through the day if I had no concern as to whether it was true that my clock was correct, or true that my bus left at 8 a.m., or true that I'm supposed to show up to work by 9? Truth helps us deal effectively with reality. And I think to live a good life, you need to be able to deal effectively with reality. Truth helps us to know what is good and the way to live and how to be a good person. Okay. So now, philosophy not only deals with metaphysics, deals with epistemology, deals with axiology, deals with ethics and aesthetics, but it also deals with other questions outside of philosophy. This is one of the reasons I love being a philosopher, because you get to think about all kinds of things outside of your own discipline. Philosophy is deeply intertwined with knowledge, goodness, and beauty. And our basic philosophical views will affect all the areas of our lives. Now, philosophers recognize that there are obvious philosophies of things, right, in which our views of ontology, epistemology, and axiology, together with our views of truth, impact our commitment to these other areas of human life. For example, one question in science, the philosophy of science, for example, is one such philosophy of. For example, what is science? Now, you can't answer that question in the laboratory. You can't do an experiment to figure out what science is. It's a philosophical question. Religion is another area, right? Does God exist? Right? I don't think you can examine religious practices to see that. It's not an anthropology of religion that answers that. It's a philosophical question. Tools of philosophy can help answer that question. Philosophies of literature, philosophies of politics, philosophies of history, philosophies of mathematics, philosophy of mind, philosophy of business. These are all examples of philosophy where the sub-disciplines of philosophy, what is real, what is truth, what is goodness, what is beauty, all of those apply to those things, those other philosophies of. So let me give you an example of this. If you think reality is physical, this is going to affect your view about religions, right? Religious experience and religious knowledge obtained from it will be explained through the sense perception traceable to physical or empirical sensory inputs, rather than the activity of God in human affairs. Similarly, if you have a philosophy of medicine, which you maintain from one's ethics that human beings are not intrinsically valuable, then you might conclude that using various medical technologies in which human beings are of no use to society, for example, persons in vegetative states, can be experimented on for the greater good of others who are suffering. Right? In other words, your ontology is going to affect your ethics, your philosophy of medicine, your philosophy of religion, philosophy of science, etc. Right? It's important to note that any philosophy of will be deeply informed by your underlying ontology, epistemology, and ethics. And this includes your view of truth. Right? So I think it's important to get a view of truth correct before I develop my own philosophies in other areas of life. So to sum up, a philosopher will enter into various activities with wisdom. These include ontology, epistemology, particularly a study of truth for our purposes in the book that I wrote, and in axiology. Each of these activities is pursued with an eye as to how you can practice your life of well-being and well-doing. Of course, it's possible to learn about truth and about ontology, epistemology, and axiology. Maybe this will get you through a philosophy class. Or just build some information in your mind. But knowing about philosophy and truth is necessary, but not a sufficient condition for well-being and doing. Remember, philosophy, the word itself, is a friendship, means friendship with wisdom. Studying truth, which is what I do as a philosopher, and I did in the book that I wrote. Studying truth, which is what you do in philosophical exercises, that's not the essence of philosophy. You can have a great theory of truth, maybe even the best theory ever put forward. That doesn't make you a friend with wisdom. That sort of relationship means appropriating not only the truth of the theories that you've discovered in the areas of ontology, epistemology, and axiology, but it means living out what is true, loving what is true as one loves one's friends. Friendship with wisdom begins with a love of truth. Thanks for watching.
Stay psyched, Grom. You.